Applied linguistics is an interdisciplinary field which investigates, observes and offers solutions to language related problems. So there are a number of interdisciplinary areas which contribute to applied linguistics. The other disciplines which have contributed to applied linguistics are education, linguistics, psychology, computer science, anthropology and sociology. From education, we have classroom management and error analysis. From linguistics, we have linguistic theories regarding phonology, regarding syntax. From psychology, we have cognitive psychology and psychological theories of language acquisition. Computer science, we have from computer science, computer simulation program and immersion programs. Anthropology, we have anthropological views of language, and from sociology, we have functional views of language. In ELT, applied linguistics helps learners to gain insights in theory and practice of language teaching and learning. And the evaluation of applied linguistic theories which this evolved around the 1970s and 1980s with regard to language teaching. The applied linguistics thought during this time brought an expansion to the language teaching approaches and brought new insights to syllabus design and classroom methodology. So the direct implication of this kind of approach are, as you can see from the chart, syllabus plans inspired by Speech Act, needs analysis, a tolerance for learner errors, reduction in teachers' direct control over language to which the learner is exposed, and exposure to discourse. Traditionally, applied or application of linguistics is referred to as applied linguistics. This is an area where content and the speakers have dominated the paradigm of independence of language. So according to the functional tradition of linguistics, linguistics is influenced by Roman Jakobson and the Prague school, and from the anthropological views of language we have Delheims, Halliday and Roy Harris. The major work in applied linguistics has been directly concerned with language teaching and learning, and according to the linguistics applied approach, the teacher has to understand more about linguistics. So knowledge of linguistics will help to improve language learning, and applied linguistics, for the applied linguist, the knowledge about language and the skills in teaching and learning are linked. As from the diagram you can see, knowledge of language and skills in teaching and learning, these are the aspects of knowing language in the content of second language acquisition. For example, teaching the language skills, you have some ideas before going to the class, you would have some ideas about how to go about the while listening, or the while tasks or pre-tasks and the post-tasks, what kind of activities you are going to do, for example, what can do, or what kind of follow-ups or tasks, or what kind of theoretical explanations would be necessary for that particular area. And the skills in language teaching is actually execution of those plans, actually putting those plans to use, putting those plans into activities in the class. And the skills of teaching and learning, and the teacher can always learn from the students can always teach the students, and these skills has to be acquired through experience, acquired after conducting a needs analysis on the students. The students would inform about their needs, about their requirements, and the teacher can put those activities up or discuss those theories which would be necessary. So it is through understanding this better, that is understanding the skills of teaching and learning better, improvement will come from attention to methods, from better use of the old and adoption of the new. And what is this knowledge about again? This knowledge is also about language, dealing with the language system. As you can see from the slide, it is about a language or target language, TL, dealing with language structure and language and interactions with acquisition, with cognition and with society. So the first 2 points, as you can see, is about the method, and the third point is about the medium. Research in second language acquisition is a very traditional approach of applied linguistics and investigating the problem of learners' errors. So, an error is a gap in a learner's knowledge of the target language, and the language teachers can seek explanations for these errors. Is it linguistic or is it psychological? Is it linguistic, that is, has it to be accounted for by contrastive analysis, that is, an error is a confusion of some kind between the L1, one or more components of the L1 and the L2. Or is it psychological, that is, has it to be accounted for by a learning theory of some kind, for example, Vygotsky's social developmental theory or Piaget's theory on cognitive development and language, and Piaget versus Vygotsky, both can be there. So, I would just little bit like to hint on the linguistic analysis. So, what do I mean by this contrastive analysis? That is, an error is a confusion of some kind between one or more components of L1. So, if you look at this from the phonological aspect, so this has to be obviously influence of or direct transfer of L1 features into L2 into the target language, which can be overcome or which can be explained in terms of phonological theory, in terms of phonetic phoneme features, and which also needs to be compared with the context of the relationship of those elements in the context of other elements. So, applied linguistic contribution is to put these two kinds of explanations together, that is the linguistic explanation and the psychological explanation, and to look at the system of errors without seeking causes. These together yield a synchronic explanation of second language learning stages. Applied linguistics and curriculum design. This is my next point. So, curriculum design refers to the goals, content, implementation and evaluation of an education system, and thus in the language teaching we all know curriculum includes, as from the slide, the study of the purposes for which a learner needs a language, that is conducting a needs analysis, the settings of the objectives and the development of a syllabus, teaching methods and materials, and the evaluation of the effects of these procedures on the learner's language ability. The basic applied linguistic contribution in curriculum design is to provide a plan. So, what is this plan about? A plan which would encompass a sequenced series of teaching stages and goals, so which would ensure that the teaching includes basic grammar, the teaching includes vocabulary and pragmatics in the included time available. Applied linguistics and material development. The principal concern of materials is the development of linguistic abilities of the learner, and the emphasis is on words, phrases and isolated words first rather than the discourse. The emphasis is also on an accumulative approach to learning in which there is classroom interaction for both the teacher and the learner. The materials thus attempt to replace the teacher in direct control over language learning and language use in the classroom. For this, what is to be done? There has to be pair work and group work for repetition and reproduction of language. There has to be meaning focused work for either the learners alone or between the learner and the teacher. In conclusion, I would like to say that the chief role of applied linguistics in language teaching, in the field of language teaching and learning, is to ask the right question in the right context about the second language learner, and at the same time to ensure that in spite of its peculiarity, the learner is approached as an example of the general system of language teaching to which the learner belongs. We have a short video on language learning, so let's watch it.
The natural approach. The natural approach method was developed by Tracy Terrell and Stephen Krashen. It is based on the language acquisition theory developed by Krashen. The native language should not be used in the classroom. A lot of vocabulary should be exposed to the student. A lot of activities should be developed. The natural approach is a method for beginners based on observation and interpretation on how a person acquires his or her first language. It rejects the formal organization of language. It is not based on grammar. It is based on communication. It emphasizes comprehensible and meaningful practice activities rather than production of grammatically perfect sentences. This method appeared in 1983 in a book called The Natural Approach, written by Tracy Terrell and Stephen Krashen. The natural approach works based on the use of language in communicative situations without recourse to the native language and without reference to grammatical analysis. The natural approach is based on the principles of naturalistic language learning in young children. There is an emphasis on exposure, on input. The central component of language is not grammar, it is communication. Language is viewed as a vehicle for communicating meanings and messages. Communication. The lexicon for both perception and production is considered critical in the construction of messages. Krashen language acquisition theory. The natural approach is based on Krashen language acquisition theory. Principal tenets of this theory are the following. The acquisition-learning hypothesis. There are two distinctive ways of developing competence in a second language: acquisition and learning. Acquisition is an unconscious process that involves the naturalistic development of language proficiency through understanding and using language for meaningful communication. The monitor hypothesis. Conscious learning can function only as a monitor that checks and repairs the output. Therefore, acquisition is always much better for learning. The natural order hypothesis. Certain grammatical structures are acquired before others. For instance, the present tense is acquired before the past tense. The input hypothesis. People acquire language best by understanding input that is slightly beyond their current level of competence. The affective filter hypothesis. The emotional state and the attitudes are an adjustable filter that freely passes or blocks input necessary to acquisition. The student needs motivation, self-confidence, and low anxiety. Finally, we're going to give 4 recommendations for the English class. First, there should be a lot of comprehensible input. Second, whatever helps comprehension is important. Visual aids are useful, as is exposure to a wide range of vocabulary rather than study of syntactic structures. Third, the focus in the classroom should be on listening and reading. Speaking should be allowed to emerge. Fourth, in order to lower the affective filter, student work should center on meaningful communication rather than on form. Input should be interesting and so contribute to a relaxed classroom atmosphere. The natural approach method was developed by Tracy Terrell and Stephen Krashen. It is based on the language acquisition theory developed by Krashen. The native language should not be used in the classroom. A lot of vocabulary should be exposed to the student. A lot of activities should be developed. We can develop activities with the total physical response method. The total physical response method is based on actions. The natural approach is a method for beginners based on observation and interpretation on how a person acquires his or her first language.